Hey, there I am.
Hey, hello,
Hey,
and
good
welcome.
to see you.
Yeah, we're gonna do a new episode of the Game Audio Hour, episode 205. Holy crap, has it actually been 205 episodes? 205 episodes of this fortnightly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to the latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here is where you'll find in depth coverage and opinions related to game audio. And I know some of you will probably see that we have a new guest over here. We'll get to him eventually. For now, let's just go in clockwise order. You know me, I'm Vincent over here. This guy up on top is Alex. How are you doing?
I am doing fairly well, thank you, Vince. As you can see, I'm in high fidelity this evening, or this afternoon in your case. I went to the trouble of preparing a microphone for your listening pleasure so that you can hear my voice and the ungated sound of my noisy PC in the highest of fidelities. Speaking of high fidelities, let's segue right on into that guy. It's Mike.
Well, I too have decided to forego the honest, down to earth realism of speaking directly into a computer microphone and have dragged the old extra audio interface out of the closet. And now I'm talking into a glorious Audio Technica. So I'm sorry for those of you who are fans of kind of the low res, gritty, echoey, you are there in the living room kind of sound, but we have upgraded the audio quality, at least of my end of things.
Excellent. And with that out of the way, we can get right to introducing our wonderful guest over here. He is a fantastic guitarist and multi instrumentalist. He's helped us a lot on our various projects, not just us, but many other esteemed composers throughout the world, not just in video games. This guy is Tom Strahle. Tom, how are you doing?
I am just using my computer mic, so I hope it sounds okay.
Oh, it sounds fantastic.
Does it?
I mean, your
Sorry.
computer is doing a wonderful job of showing us, wow, that impressive array of instruments behind you, and I'm honestly, that's fantastic. It's just a great visual. Of that I need to zoom in on that right now because it's gorgeous.
Specific instruments for a specific period of time. I'll put them on the wall, so I have them right there, and I don't have to go to the closet and pull them out. And I try to work as fast as I can so that we can stay under budget.
That is great. Also,
I probably shouldn't do that. I should probably put everything really far away and charge for the transportation time as well, right?
Yeah, and
cartage is
cartage
a.
too, because yeah.
I'm gonna
I know.
I'm gonna go ahead and say
I was a little
something
late to the
really,
game.
really silly, but basically, yeah. When I zoomed in on you, there was suddenly no audio. So, oh no, all that
Oh,
intro that you just did there, Tom, kind of went away because I decided to switch camera angles, and I'm so sorry about that.
interesting.
Um,
Oh, I didn't know that. It's all right.
it's
Uh, what did we miss? What did I
well,
say?
I guess you started out by saying that it really wasn't decorative. You know, all of those instruments are things that you use, and it's. I mean, that's a great assortment of stuff that you've got there. And I only recognize uh, half of them, honestly. Yeah, there's a couple there that I
Well,
think, whoa, what is that exactly? I'm not totally sure.
yeah. I mean, like one of the white one over here. It looks like a guitar, but it's actually a bass six, which is a great instrument. We can get right into it. I can talk about it. I love that instrument a lot. You'll recognize it when you hear it. Actually, it makes me want to pick up a Fender Jaguar because I don't have a Fender Jag, but this has the electronics for Fender Jag.
Huh.
But what this is an octave below a guitar, and it came up with it in the '60s. Let me see. Go here. Get a little more level. Yeah, so
So it's basically a Jaguar an octave down. Interesting.
exactly, yeah. It's basically, that's all it is. But I love it because of the Jaguar electronics. That's what makes it, it's really got some interesting, like, hollowy, and I don't know how well it's translating to you guys. You have a lot of electronic pickup configuration options. And it actually has a whammy bar. I don't have it out, but you can actually do whammy bar bass, which is kind of cool. I've used it a couple times with things. So yeah, so that's, this is just a Squire, so it wasn't but $300 or something. It wasn't very expensive, maybe $350.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then a Fender Telecaster. This is actually a $80. I love cheap guitars. This is like an $80 Epiphone Les Paul copy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not copy. I guess it's the same company. So. But I strung it up high strung. So it's kind of the opposite of a bass 6. And that's out of tune, but you can get a lot of like cluster voicings that you couldn't normally get on a regular tuned guitar. Particularly 7th chords sound magical. And then I had my daughter decorate it.
Huh.
So I mean, it's totally right out of.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's right out of what's the Beatle, the Revolver kind of vibe.
Right.
I didn't notice it for years, but it says I love you on here. She got that.
That's
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
How old is your daughter, Tom?
Well, she's 23 now. She probably did this when she was 18.
Okay, yeah, that's fantastic work.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I just gave her these, I bought it, and it was a matte finish, so this hasn't been treated at all. It's just those kind of metallic markers you can get at Staples.
Huh.
Amazing.
So as a prelude to all the amazing toys we're going to hear Tom play today, I just wanted to frame this a little bit for our audience, because we're not just trying to make you feel bad about all the gear Tom has that you don't. Tom's, among other things, he's a singer-songwriter type, but he is a studio guitarist and multi-instrumentalist, which means that when you, the listener, are working on your game score, film score, or album project, and you realize, oh, I can't play guitar, but I need some, Tom is there to bring aboard to your project and to bring all these sounds to your project, whether it's something contemporary, electric guitar, or some of the ethnomusical sounds we will hear. And I think all of us here have worked with Tom in some capacity in this way. And one thing I think is cool about guitar-ish instruments is that you get a live performance, a live player sound for just the cost of one human being. It's not like a string section where you have to hire a room full of folks to really get that full sound. It's a very economical way to bring something live and vital and perhaps improvisational to your score. So as Tom demonstrates all these wonderful sounds, remember that this is a palette that you can draw from your score. And Tom, I'll encourage you to kind of tell the audience, where you've used these instruments in projects, how they might be interested in them, and to tie it to the practical considerations of a composer who might not yet have worked with a live guitarist.
Yeah, and definitely I appreciate the shout out. The other benefit too is that I can show you that for pretty cheap you can kind of get some guitars yourself and do a lot of this. I work for a lot of composers that play guitar and actually pretty good at guitar, but they bring me in to play more of the ethnic instruments, things they can't get, or I'm a big time saver for them. It's like, I could play it, but I'd rather have you do it because it's faster. And so that's definitely the case. I have a question for you all, because you might be able to answer. If you hired one string player, one violin player to maybe double a first violin, second violin part, something like that, on a score that you had done that was all samples, would it sound any more real? Would that help at all, or would it make a difference?
It depends on the score. I actually recently did something where I did in fact hire just one violinist, and he played violin 1, violin 2, and viola. And it worked great for this particular track because it was sort of this small TV studio type of string group. I don't think it would have had nearly the same effect if I was trying to do a full string orchestra with 30, 40 some strings in their seats. But for this particular track, it worked okay because that was the type of sound we were going for.
Right. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, I was just curious about that because I've heard it being done, and if nothing else, to kind of add that real rosin sound or something, humanness of it. But so here's another guitar. Usually I have a footrest there. Again, we're not to ethnic instruments yet, but just want to show you, like, here's an example that I don't mind sharing this, but I call this my cluster guitar. I don't know that we've used it on anything, Mike, but so basically it's 6 D. I can tune it to whatever, but I normally like 6 E strings. It's all 6 D strings. Now, if you, I know Alex is already going, oh, I understand right away what you could do with this. Yeah, there's stuff you can't do on guitar, but I can do on this guitar. And I think I paid $79 for this guitar set. So I'm not really worried about the neck warping or anything like that. But I mean, that's why I originally bought it. Like, you can fade it in, get rid of the plug. I could even tune it. Like, I could even, I could get 6 semitones, which, on an electric, you couldn't. It's impossible. Literally, physically impossible.
Yeah.
But on piano, you get that sound by sitting on it. Right? So it's like, I always envied that about pianos. You can do these tight little clusters. Well, then I'm messing around with it. I'm like, well, okay, that's cool. What else can I do with it? And I realized, oh, I could do tetrachords on it. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then so I started writing pop songs with it. I go major. It's very auto harp sounding. But, again, that's just one of those things where if you got $100, you can go through it and get some, a bunch of E strings and throw it on there. And you got something that you don't even have to be a guitar player to kind of get some cool, like, sounds. I mean, I'm picking it up again, but I do this, let's see, what, wait, I'll use this. The cool thing is that they're all unison. I can tune them to anything. But if I use a slide, I can get 6 different pitches within one semitone. And kind of go back. I mean, you can't get. How would you get that? That's almost like a treated piano sound or something.
Yeah,
Tom, that would sound amazing with an EBow.
Yes, I have it. I have an EBow right here. I use it all the freaking time. I use it with Steve Barton all the time. He loves the EBow. Let's see.
Tom, for the uninitiated, can you just quickly explain what an EBow is and why it's cool?
Yes, EBow is basically called that because it's an electronic bow, and it's been around since the 70s. In fact, the guy that invented it still owns the patent, still has a one-man booth at the NAMM show. And basically what it does is this one is a dual-purpose one. It can do normal and then an octave up, like a harmonic, which works sometimes, but and I like to sometimes roll off the tone, get a kind of a hollow sound, like a flute almost. I can do it basically. And so the bow is doing and the EBow is doing most of the heavy lifting. I've even done things like where you can take like a chord and go across the chord. Got to get a cello concerto vibe, you know.
Speaking of cello, actually, I've had some good success using an ebow on bass.
Yes.
I'm a bass player, as you can see behind me. But
yeah.
it takes a little longer to get the string going, but it sounds a lot like a cello.
Yeah, it really does. And yeah, it's harder. Oops, I turned it up. There we go. It's hard because the way the rails are set up on the thing are spaced for an electric for a guitar.
Right.
So he almost needs to manufacture a bass one that's maybe has 2 batteries in it, so it's stronger and is a little wider. I don't think he has that. I've not seen that because it's just the rails are just perfect because it actually guides you. You know, you can only do 1 string at a time generally. And what I'll do a lot too is I'll do something like this where I'll let's see, I'll pull up like delay. You like, you know, kind of a massive amount of delay, right? I'm just gonna like turn everything up. it's like, so we got a lot of delay. Let's see. Okay, and then I'll take a slide, and oftentimes I can be in tune, but I'll be like. See, you have basically a million pitches going to get. It's like a giant oscillator. It's like having 100 oscillators on your synthesizer, right? You know. Very Chernobyl-like. You know, I'm always trying to get Chernobyl-type sounds. I actually have a whole folder of guitar effects that I call Chernobyl effects, and they're all different sounds that I can get. I mean, we could talk about electric guitar stuff. Even as well, we could do a completely another video broadcast at some point of that, but because I do a lot of a lot of different sound effects and things that don't sound like guitar, so sound design kind of stuff. I do a lot of that, which I really love.
I see you clicking around there, Tom. Are you doing that through software, or do you have a big, massive pedal board that you're tap dancing?
I really don't. I don't even own a pedal board. I have lots of pedals. So what I typically do, if I'm using pedals in a live situation or in a studio situation, I only use the pedal I want for that moment. So that way my guitar's not going through 50 pedals. And then I just swap them out and bring. But I could bring 50 pedals to a session. It's not very common. I use mostly Guitar Rig and Logic Effects, and then I also use Amplitude. But I'm really pretty familiar with Guitar Rig. I really like it, and I've got so many presets now, settings that I've saved that just is a huge time saver, you know. So let's talk about some ethnic. So actually, this last year was it last year? Was it this year that Mike, we did some loot, right?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think that was me. I think we talked about it.
I played on something last year. Was it just rock? We did rock last year.
I know we did something. I'm blanking out. It's been so many sessions.
Yeah, we did one session last year. I think it was a rock thing. But yeah, so this is a loot. I've had this about 4 years, I think.
What's the tuning between the strings on a lute? Is it a fourth or a fifth? Or something else?
It's a pain in the butt. For one thing, I have new respect for violinists, although violinists have micro tuners, right, on their, you know. So that's, I don't know, when did they develop that? Because man, having 1-to-1, you know, gear ratio peg tuners, and this is, I have 15 of them. This is not fun. And they're nylon strings, so they tend to stretch. The cool thing about the lute is the bottom 4 courses are octaves. So it's like having a 12-string octave nylon guitar. And And I've even used pick on it, because I don't, in a game, in a TV show, in a movie, you really tell if it's a finger or a pick, But because there's so many courses, there's 8 courses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's really hard for me to find my thumb placement. Like, and it's tuned up a minor third from a guitar. So basically, it's like if you put a capo on a guitar at the 3rd fret, from this string down, that's basically, it's G, G, C, F, B flat, D, G. And the interesting thing about lute, which is the opposite of the oud, is the top string is a single string. It's kind of I forget what they call it, there's a word for it, but it's a melody string. It's just one string. And you're supposed to play more like this and not like this. Classical guitars play like this. Lute is played more like this because your fingernails hit the string at a different. So I try to incorporate as much of the legitimate style whenever I play any instrument that I pick up. I wish I had a lifetime to dedicate to every style. I literally, if I had 1,000 lifetimes, one of them would be spent in Andalusia learning flamenco guitar in Spain. Because that's the only way to learn it. You can't learn it from a book or a video. You have to literally sit across from a master and have them impart it to you. And so, lute is one of those things where I just kind of I kept getting calls for lute, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to just have to buy one. And I kind of wish I'd gotten a 6-course one because the lower strings throw me, but I got an 8-course because I thought I'd really regret not having the lower range. So I can actually get lower than a classical guitar. That's a D. Right now I have that tuned to E. Normally you would have to tune that. Let's see. Yeah, normally I would have that tuned to F, but I was playing something where I needed an open E string, so I went ahead and tuned the F string down to E. But you can kind of tune it. The bottom 2 strings you can kind of tune any way you want. And it wasn't expensive. I think it was about $1,000. So made in Turkey, I think. I can't remember where it was made, but it's beautiful.
Sorry, I was going to say, in terms of application, obviously so many games are set in a quasi-medieval setting or quasi-Renaissance, and you have the inevitable tavern or the court music in the background, and this sounds so much different from acoustic guitar. As opposed to trying to fake it with a nylon string guitar, this will immediately, just through the timbre of the thing, put you in a sense of a time and place. So you can immediately hear.
You can tell the difference even over the Skype, right? Just the octave strings, that makes a huge difference to my ear. The one little trick you can do with a nylon guitar is capo at the 3rd fret. Like there was a Louis Milan piece that I played at a lot of weddings, and I would always capo at the 3rd fret because it was written for lute. And so it was written in the 15th century. And I wanted to evoke the lute sound and the tonal quality, the shortness of scale and the pitch by playing it. Actually, I was reading it down. I was reading it in standard, but I would capo at the 3rd fret and just pretend I was reading, in standard. But in fact, Mike is the reason I have the oud. Do you remember why, Mike?
Yeah, it was a game score called Empire Earth 2.
Yes.
From first couple of years of the aughts. And there was a whole, a Mideastern civilization, and they needed some ambient music. So I think I asked you if you had an oud, and I think that was your excuse to get one.
Yeah, you said I had 3 months because it was it was really, really smart of you to give me that much warning. Mike is actually one of the. Sorry, Michael. Is it Mike? Do you go by? Are you okay with Mike?
Either way is fine. Yeah.
He always would think of the musician he was hiring. Whenever he hired, whenever I worked for him, he was. We did one. We won't. It shall remain nameless. The movie we worked on. It was pretty funny story. Maybe for another time. But it was one of those things where, in fact, I was just having a conversation with another composer today named Jason Graves. You know Jason at all?
Oh yeah.
And sometimes I get asked to do this. Sometimes I get music and the notes, they want these specific notes, and sometimes they just say, "Hey, just improvise." I'm fine with either one of those. The problem comes when you give me notes and then you say something like this. Because then it's like you're asking me to do my left brain and the right brain at the same time. And that, for some reason, is really, really difficult. It's like, it's almost, I want, you want me to improvise, but you want me to, so Mike took that into consideration when he had me play this thing. And it was basically, I think, like 5 notes of a Lydian scale. But he said it was just slashes, and it was 8th note slashes. There were, he wanted me to randomize it. So right there, I'm being asked to be whatever left brain, whatever the creative brain, which is the creative?
The right brain by Psych 101 standards. Yeah.
Okay, right brain. So you're asking me to use my right brain to be kind of randomize these scales and hit these notes. And I think it was 5 notes. You said you wanted these 5 notes. There were, and the thing was it was 4/4, but then it may have been 5/8 or 9/8, and there may have been there were odd bars throughout this whole piece. And there were points in the piece where you wanted specifically this note here, and at this point, this note here. And that's really difficult to be randomizing, keeping track of mixed meters, and then try to remember to hit that one note. Well, what Mike did was he put 4 clicks. Even in the score, he wrote 4 X's, so I knew the clicks were coming. When I heard 4 clicks, I had 4 clicks to get to that note, however I was doing it, and then continue on. And then I would hear 4 more clicks, and then I had to hit that A note or whatever note. It was freaking brilliant, and I think we got it in like 2 or 3 passes. And it was for kind of a creepy moment in the movie. It was a horror film that we won't say anymore. Oh, you can look it up on the IMDb. I'm sure if you cross-pollinate us, you'll find it. But it was amazing how you kind of helped me there. But the same thing was true with this instrument. Was he gave me 3 months to get one. Like, do you have an oud? And I said no. And he said get one. So I called George Deering and I said, what do you recommend? He goes, just call up, just go to Lark in the Morning, which is a great store that has all sorts of ethnic instruments, and just order the $300 oud, but make sure you order new strings and put the new strings on, because the strings they come with are crap. And I did that, and so I mean I've been trying to find a better oud. The problem is that to upscale is like $5,000, but I've been doing so much oud playing that I'm like, it would be nice to have a good one. I mean, a real legit, but this is totally legit. And the tuning on this, again, I leave everything the tuning is supposed to be. This is an Egyptian tuning. There's several different, there's Syrian tuning. I really like the Egyptian tuning, but I really try to leave it because it's a lot easier to be idiomatic when you're in the right tuning. But it makes reading a little bit difficult, but it takes me about 5-10 minutes of just kind of reprogramming my brain to be able to, the harder part is actually playing the fretless aspect of it. But the interesting thing is the tuning of it is D, G, A, D, G, C. And so what I think the reason the tuning was, the scales that they use in Arabic music are non-transposable. So they're called maqams, and they're not like this. There may be this one maqam, and you learn that maqam, and you can't. It's like in D, kind of D based, right? You can't modulate it to E flat or E or F or F sharp. It just is that one. So you kind of just get it. And then they have millions of these scales, just tons of them. They have literally notation for. And I learned all this stuff in the 3 months and didn't need any of this information for Mike's session, because everything we did was Western diatonic. But and you can see I've marked it because I need to have my pitches. I've got my neck marked. I've even got the headstock marked, so if I need to tune it, I can figure out which pegs do what notes.
That's an oud hack right there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the D string, the lowest string, is a single string, as opposed to the lute, which is the opposite. But if I've got a D, I've got a pitch I can tune to, right? And so that's what I think they got the 1, 4, 5. They got the G. And in Arabic music, you would have a note between, on the G string, you would have something between G sharp and A. You might, that would be a normal thing for them. Like, to me, it sounds out of tune, but to them, it's totally normal because they grew up listening to that their whole lives. Which again, that's another lifetime I would love to spend in, in Syria or somewhere, just learning to play, all those instruments. It would be amazing.
Have you ever tried the Turkish saz? The long-necked Turkish instrument.
Not. Is it like a oud tuning with a?
I don't know about the tuning. It looks
strings, right?
It's a Turkish instrument, and it's got 4 strings, has it? Or
is that 6? Saz? Is that?
Yeah, that's right. It's a very long, thick neck.
It's funny. We were in Barcelona, and I went into the shop, and there was a guy sitting there playing a saz. He was like the shop owner or whatever. He was just watching. And I go, "Oh, that's a saz." And he was like, "You know what this is?" And because I look very gringo, and I go, "Yeah, can I play it?" And he's like, "Okay." And I pick it up, and immediately I'm playing something. I don't know what I was playing. And he was like, "Oh, okay, you know how to play something. You can play a stringed instrument." Immediately I had, because I think a saz actually has the plastic frets like the lute has. It's not fretless. So, but I love playing fretless instruments now. I didn't realize. I mean, I just love the, and the thing is, when you're playing, you got to bring a lot of slides into it because that's it. Otherwise, it's too perfect. Now, I did. If you pull up. I played on the Pathless. I played a lot of oud and lute on Pathless for Austin Wintry's that game. And Dallas, his assistant, does these amazing scores, right, where you can follow along. And I think that something Cernus or something, I forget what the name of the cue is. It's me on lute and oud, and I did it here in my studio, and it's with an orchestra and percussion and everything. I'm pretty sure it's live orchestra, but I'm not 100% sure. And I watched that score go by, and keep in mind, I didn't get charts for any of this. He sent me MIDI, and I turned his MIDI into charts, which that actually takes up half of the time. It takes half of my time is spent actually converting, because he like Austin will play, like with heavy, like his hands weigh 1,000 pounds or something. It's like, dude, I got to shorten every note so that I can actually read this thing. In fact, I got an example. Here's one that I didn't do any work on, and it's fine, except that this rhythm is not at all what was on the recording, because it was really in 12/8. Well, by the time Dallas gets around to doing the beautiful score, it looks great. I wish I'd had that when I was doing the track. But I listened to it and I was like, wow, I can't believe did you guys like pitch correct it and rhythm correct it? And he goes, we didn't touch it. That's how you played it. And I went, man, I'm good. I was, it's just funny to be blown away by your own playing and going, and there have been times, particularly with Austin, it's funny. I don't know if he'll watch this, but there have been times where, and he knows this, where I'm like, I don't think this is playable. And I'm literally like, I'm working and practicing and literally having to punch in every bar, and I'm really good at editing and getting it sound like, it's one fluid thing, but I'm literally almost crying. Like, I'm making $1 an hour for my work here because I'm taking way too long. There was something, it was on Dobro actually. And this is, I wouldn't call this an ethnic instrument, but it is definitely it's guitar-like, it's guitar-ish. And it's 6 strings. I tune it open G, which is one way to play open G is D, G, D, G, B. So I've got a G chord right here. But fifth the bass, I don't really use that string too much. Bluegrass dobro players will tune it in 2 G triads, like GBD, GBD. I've done that. It sounds great. But I like, for a beer commercial kind of vibe, I like having the power chord right there. which is a little harder to get if you've got two major triads, you know?
It does sound like a beer commercial, doesn't it? Quick, somebody do a voiceover. We need a heavy, heavy American accent.
Yeah.
After a hard day's work in the field with your truck, you want to kick back with some Coors Light.
Yeah, it's a fun instrument to play. Normally, I would use metal finger picks to kind of get a bright, really in your face kind of sound. The only problem with metal finger picks is if I'm having to do punch-ins, it's like, dang it, I got to take the picks off, and I got to, okay, here we go, and then I got to put the picks back on, and really hard to type efficiently with metal finger picks on. Let's see.
Tom, I'm going to interject with one or two working with a guitarist 101 type questions for those who may not have been here for your first show, where I think we asked you the same thing. But you touched upon this when you were talking about working with Austin. What are the different ways that a composer can give you music to play? Like, what are the range of options?
Well, like I said, I'm fine with, if you don't mind paying me the time to edit the MIDI to turn it into a chart, you just send me the MIDI, I can turn it to that way. You don't have to hire a copyist, but I think a copyist would be cheaper than me. If you have a lot of notes for me to play, if your MIDI is really clean, some composers send me very clean MIDI. So I can immediately just hit Command 3 and print it. And boom, I've got a chart like that. So a clean MIDI. The other thing is I have read MIDI roll before, like piano roll before. I will do that. Mike, I think we did this once at your place. I know I used to do it with Jasper Randall. I don't know if you know who Jasper Randall is. He's a vocal contractor mainly, but here in LA. But Jasper would write these classical guitar parts that he really wanted specific volumes and everything. And the great thing about looking at a MIDI piano track is that you can see the intensity of each individual note, right, by color. And so I would read that because he would want there to be a certain volume arc, which you couldn't write in music notation because you'd have P, MP, M, F, MF, F, FF, FFF on each note would have a different dynamic marking. It would be ridiculous. So
you can sight read automation is what you're saying.
I can sight read automation, yeah.
Now that's a case where we've got someone who has a specific melody line for you. But what about the case where someone has a general idea, like they want some kind of rhythmic lute or acoustic guitar or some rock guitar thing, but they don't necessarily know exactly what they want. They just have more of a genre reference than a particular set of notes. How can they work with you with coming from that angle?
Right, and in that context, sometimes I will have composers that just send me the track, and then they say, "Yeah, just do whatever." So and then so in a rock context, sometimes it's real obvious. Sometimes it's trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Sometimes the track you're sending me isn't very rock. Harmonically, musically, I want a major seventh and I want this thing or whatever, flat 5 chords, and I'm like, okay, but basically, yeah, I've worked with just having a track to listen to, and I may do my own chart. Sometimes I will just make some notes like, okay, it changes here or whatever. But as far as notation, yeah, a simple rhythm chart is fine also. If it's very varied, then it's nice to have a rhythm chart so I can see if there's going to be, it may do the same thing, like almost exactly the same thing in the first 8 than the second 8, but there's a slight change in the second 8, and you might want to make sure I catch that. You might want to send that to me, or I'm going to miss it and maybe not notice that I miss it, or it's going to take me too long to get it right because I got to redo that, and I've got to get it in my head that it changes on the repeat or whatever. So having basic rhythm charts is good. They can be hand drawn, and I've had people send me photographs of charts, that they drew with their hand on cocktail napkins. I've pretty much run the gamut. Sometimes I will occasionally get a blank chart, basically blank everything, and they just say, "Hey, I just want you to strum some chords." I did that recently for a busker thing for the game Watch Dogs. And so I got to kind of create my own thing, but I was given parameters like, we want this to happen by this point and this to happen by this point. So that, so I guess people were running over me with cars and stuff. I don't know. It's like, I was kind of playing a character. But yeah, so some people like some composers will send me their session and I'll open up the session so I have all the MIDI. Austin will do that. So I literally, the first thing I do is I wait for the session to load, and then I delete everything that doesn't have my name on it, so that I'm not running 1,000 samplers. But it is cool because I pretty much know what Austin's template looks like. So that comes in handy. But yeah, so then I take that MIDI and turn it into whatever. But yeah, I don't know if I'm really answering your question, Mike, at all. But
no, that sounds great. So it sounds like if someone is a traditionalist, they can send you good old-fashioned sheet music or a chart with chords and maybe some rhythmic indicators. And or in addition to that, or instead of that, they can send you just raw MIDI, which you can transcribe if they want to engage you as a kind of quasi MIDI transcriptionist, or they can send you a Logic session, right, with with everything else there, maybe either bounced for convenience or even the actual virtual instruments still intact, and just have you play directly in the Logic session, and then you send it back. Is that right?
Yeah. In fact, I think that's how we did our last session together. Something similar to that, where I kind of opened your session and everything was there that I needed, and you bounced everything. So yeah, and so for as far as what bouncing, most like some like Jablonski will often bounce a click. He'll bounce a full mix, and then he'll maybe bounce a full mix without guitars, and then he'll bounce a guitar. So I don't need every single string. I don't need all of that. So basically, I might get 4 stems from someone, some composers, where I've got, the click, the full mix with everything in it, so I can hear what they're thinking, the full mix without my part in it, and then my part. So that way I can go, oh, okay, that's the articulation you wanted on this or whatever for the guitar. Okay, I get it. So sometimes, and I like having the MIDI because sometimes if it's really, really hard and complex, I'll just play with the click and the original MIDI playing the piano, and I'll play along with it on with Bazooki. I might have to, and it's like if it's really rhythmically complex, I might just get rid of all the percussion and string and everything else. I have to shut all that out and just really focus on what's written. And so I might do that as well. But yeah, as far as musically what to bounce, not even chart wise, it's nice to have options where I can make you do a bounce. So if you've done sample guitars, that's only if you've done demo. Usually, if there's notes written, usually they have some sample playing that instrument. So, and this is a Greek bouzouki. This is actually, I just used this on a cup with Jason Graves, and I also use this with Austin's newest thing. So, and I just got this from Greece. In fact, I got this, and a great place to find instruments like this is Etsy. I've been finding a lot of really cool instruments on Etsy. That's where I got the Ruan, the Moon guitar. The Ruan I just got on Etsy, and it's just GD. So it's like I can play. It's in G even, so we're gonna get into royalty problems, but it's just designed specifically to play Smoke on the Water. But I could also
my mother is like, she's asleep right now in Australia, but she would be cringing so much to hear you play Smoke on the Water on that. Like slide on it as well. No.
But the beauty of it is, one of the things that I get hired for is because I think outside the box. right? So like it occurs, you know, when I have this in my hands, I'm like G D G. Well, that's. I mean, it's just like the dobro. I'm like, that's the coolest thing. It's so easy to pick up a ruan and start playing it. You know. It's one of the easiest instruments I've ever picked up to play.
So in terms of where you'd normally use the ruan, I mean, to me, it has a kind of rustic, Asian, Chinese folk sound to it. So I assume that if you're doing a game with that kind of setting and you want some kind of regional specificity in your music, that would be a good choice.
Exactly, but sometimes I'm working on, because again, a lot of games are fantasy. So they are dealing with worlds that don't exist. So that's where oftentimes I'll get called because they want some. I mean, I always use Austin so much but all of these instruments, like I've got several. I'm going to show you this one here. But they all have little. They got little hangers because they're hanging in my bathroom and in my hallway and everything because I want to remember that I have them. If they're in a case in a closet, I'll forget that I have them. And so Austin will say, "Give me something weird and play the melody weird on." So we'll do a demo where I'll play the melody on 4 different instruments that are like, what the heck? Like I even did, like played on ukulele, but I had paper clips hanging from every string, multiple. So it just sounded like this rattly, total treated piano kind of thing. And so again, a lot of the times you deal with, I try to invent, like the perfect example is the cluster, what I call the cluster guitar, where I'm inventing something that didn't exist prior to me thinking of it. And this is an example of that. Beth and I were in Ventura, and I went to a guitar store, and I want to get a good Martin ukulele. I always wanted. I already had plenty of ukuleles, but I thought, I'd like to get a Martin soprano. So I bought this Martin soprano, and then we're at a restaurant, and this lady comes up to me, and she said, I heard you talking about ukuleles. Actually, I'm trying to sell my ukuleles. And I said, really? She goes, what would you give me for this? And she pulled this. It was actually, the case alone was probably worth $60. I said, I'll give you $60. She said, sold, And she was from Hawaii, older lady, and she just like had more ukuleles and she knew what to do with. So I'm like, well, this is a long neck, and I've already got a ukulele. So I thought, what can I do with this? And I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my guitar tech make this a fretless instrument. So he took out the frets and filled it with some kind of filler material there. So it looks like it has frets, but it doesn't. That way I can find what I need. And I was thinking I would call it an ukulele because it's like an oud with a ukulele. Right. But then I was messing around with it, and I just did this out of the blue. Let's see. I was like, wait, that sounds like a coda. So it's kind of got a coda vibe to it, and I've used this on several things where we wanted some sound that we'd never heard before. So that's where, thinking outside the box, because I'm not just a guitar player. I'm also a songwriter and a composer. So when I write pop music, I write with a lot of pop artists, and one of the things I try to bring to that is I try to come up with something that's never been done on a guitar before. So if I play something and go, well, that's been done, I'll send that to one of my libraries because they love guitar rock, right? But if I come up with something that's like, well, I've never thought of that, I've never done that before. Let me try to develop that into some kind of pop sensibility. And then I'll send that to one of the pop producers that I work with, and then they'll get it to a team of writers, and then it hopefully shows up on a record somewhere. So my brain is always working on the creative aspect of things, as well as I think my newest, this is cool. If you don't have one of these, you can get one. I got this on eBay. Do you know what this is?
Oh yeah, it's
that.
What do you call it? I've seen it.
It is,
but yeah, Suzuki makes it, and it's
yeah, it's a Nagoya harp.
Right, yeah, Nagoya harp, exactly.
It's all, in this case, it's all G strings. So it's a low G string and another low G string and then 3 high G strings. And then these things fretted. It's like, I feel like a court stenographer when I play this thing. And so you're like, you've got this drone. It's really cool, and it's chromatic, so I can.
Does that have a pickup, Tom?
It does.
You plugged it in there.
Yeah, I can really. I can run it through effects. I can turn on the delays again. And they're a little out of tune, which actually I kind of like because it creates kind of an oscillation or whatever. But yeah, it's. Oops, where did it go? Oh, I turned it. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. I meant to turn that off. Okay, so yeah, so it's cool, and the G string, the drone string is set really low. It's like there's a big gap between the height of the strings. So I could just play the melody string. I don't have to hit the drone, so it doesn't have to sound like a bagpiper. Or if I hit the drone. Now, I want to get an acoustic one, but I have a feeling that you're going to hear a lot of the clickety-clicks of the keys in the acoustic thing. But then when I was listening to some Nagoya harp music, I realized, oh, wait, that's part of the sound. I always wondered what instrument that was when I heard it on soundtracks or whatever, but it is literally, that is part of the sound of an acoustic Nagoya harp. So I think the reason there's so many of these, I got this on eBay for like $180, just like, I just got this like a week ago. But I think the reason there's so many of them, I think it's one of those things that it's like a ukulele, you know, like everybody learns how to play ukulele, like every kid can play ukulele. This was used, and it's just got a little bit of pick scratches on it, but that's it. So you can't, I mean, I got to remember to turn it off though. It's got a battery, so. Let's see, what else? Well, I also recently, on a Jablonski movie, believe it or not, I played thumb piano on a document. You know, mostly we're trying to create these ostinato parts or whatever. And I have that one, and then I bought another one that is like a new one, and it's nowhere near as good as sounding. You know, it won't buzz. Like I try to get the buzz, but the little chain on there just doesn't. It just doesn't buzz nearly as much as this one has little pieces of metal wrapped around it. Oops, sorry.
I was going to ask what that was. The kind of buzzing sound. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. See these things here are loose, and you just take pliers and you can tune them by pulling them out or pushing them in. But I got this tuned to D major. But it's a really, really cool. And the crazy thing is, I got like this one, both of these. My mom brought these back for me when I was in high school from Africa. And also this thing, which I thought was like a water rain stick, right? I don't even want to know what's inside here. But it's actually supposed to play this way. So I actually played that on the soundtrack as well. And then this thing too, which again, it's not a very loud shaker, and it sounds like there might be bugs in there from like 40 years ago. I'm not sure. I'm hoping not.
Wow. But
yeah, so it's just amazing that I had no idea, you know, didn't. I mean, this is just a fraction of my instruments. I mean, I got this, speaking of fretless instrument, you know what this is?
It looks like an air hoop, but it probably isn't.
Yeah, that's pretty close. It's a tumbie. So it's basically a broomstick with a string on it, and a drum head. You know, and a tumbie. It was used on that Missy Elliott song. It's just real hard to play in tune because the strings just kind of going all over the place. It's like this really, again, with a friction tuner. And then, so this is an Indian instrument. And like I said, it's called a tumbie. That's a soprano. So they make big ones. This is called a gobchang, I think. So you just tune it to a pitch. And you just squeeze it, and it creates this. It's got a little drum head on the bottom.
Wow,
it's really cool. You know, so I love having this kind of stuff around.
Hey Tom, I think there was a question earlier in the chat. Want to make sure that we get that in. I guess a composer was asking about what budgets look like when composers are doing these asks, because he is an indie composer.
Yeah, I mean, I have my minimum. I don't know. Should I say that here?
I would say it's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, they can reach out to me, you know, at tstrahle@mac.com. But yeah, I mean, I have a minimum that I generally try to stick to. And then union stuff actually pays sometimes a little less than my minimum. But yeah, the one thing I do try to get rid of, particularly for indie composers, is I try to get rid of the minimum time constraint. Now, I'm not going to do a 30-minute session, but I don't have a 3-hour minimum. So if you really only need one guitar track, you're not going to have to pay, you know, $400 or $500 for that. If it takes me less than an hour, then it's going to be my hourly rate, you know, for that hour. And then, so you know, you're looking at under $200 an hour for something, and you know, potentially. And now, the thing is, if you're going to come to me and say, well, okay, I want to hire you for an hour, and they throw all this music at me, and like, can you get it all done in an hour? It's like, well, prioritize it for me, you know, and realize that the clock is starting if we're going to be talking on the phone for a half an hour, because you know, I get it pretty quick. I understand what's going on. I don't need to know the backstory on everything. You know, I don't need to know how you got the gig. I don't need to know the story of every character. Sometimes I do. You know, the thing is, if I'm in a studio doing in a session and we're doing a film score, oftentimes I'm watching the screen, right? I'm seeing the action on the screen, and the music that I'm playing is religious, but at the same time, they really want it to kind of line up kind of with what's going on screen, not to the point where it's like a cartoon or anything like that, like a, you know, 60s cartoon kind of cheesy, like boing, boing, you know, kind of thing. But it definitely, there are times where you're kind of watching and you're being inspired by what you're seeing on the screen. So I do get that, but definitely. For a young composer, you know, just prioritize what you really want guitar, you know, and just because I could play it, you know, just because the piece is only an hour long doesn't mean it's going to take me an hour to record the guitars for it. So, what is it they say you can do? Was it 3 minutes of music a day as a composer? Writing average about 3 minutes a day is about the most you could do. Is that right?
Depends on the style of music and the instrumentation.
Right.
Yeah.
If someone, let's say you've got an indie composer and they're thinking, you know, they're guitar curious, right? So they're thinking, hey, it'd be cool to have some of these sounds, but they don't quite know what they want or they don't know what's feasible. Can they do a consultation with you? Just like sit down and do a video chat and say, I'm doing something medieval. Can you just quickly show me what the options would be? And can they have that conversation without racking up a huge, you know, couple $100 an hour charge? Because we want to get people in the habit of using live guitar
right.
and stuff like that.
I mean, I don't mind doing that, but I've had composers in the past where it's like they want to have 3 of these conversations for an hour session. So it can get a little. You got to keep in mind my time too, and I'm happy to. One of like I said with Austin on that one track that we did, I played the melody with 4 different instruments, but it was just a short snippet so that he could decide, okay, I definitely want, I chose a hybrid of these two instruments playing the melody. So from now on, we're going to call it X, and this is what, every time this melody shows up, you're going to play both of these instruments. So I don't have to do all four, but I did do a little consult. Now I'm sure it was rolled into the feed. That was different because I was actually recording. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I mean, it's fairly easy. Most composers will send me, hey, I'm looking for something like this, and they send me a YouTube video of a lute, and I'm like, well, yeah, I got that instrument. Or they may send me a YouTube, what's this instrument? And I'll go, oh, that's an oud, and yeah, I can play something like that. So sometimes it can be done with just simply sending me a YouTube link without me having to audition and get out, because it just even setting up for you guys, getting these guitars out of the cases, it took me a good 15, 20 minutes just to kind of get into I've got 3 different guitar closets. So I have 100 instruments at least. So, and this is a baglama, which is a Greek instrument, and it sounds like a radio. It sounds like it's going through a radio filter.
Cool.
So, a little out of tune right now, but cute little instrument though.
Yeah.
You don't really get a sound, a sound chamber this small for many instruments. But yeah, but I'm happy to. I like working with new composers. I'm always, every year I meet a couple new composers and work with them, and I've got my staple composers that I tend to work for a lot, and then there's another group of composers that I'll do 1 or 2 things a year with. So Jeff Toyne, I don't know if you know Jeff, and his wife Aiku Fukushima, they both use me on things. And Jeff is currently scoring the TV show. I don't know if it's a Fox show. It was last year. Filthy Rich, was it called Filthy Rich or something? So I played some on that. That was union. So, which is, good because of the potential back end, but I think on an hourly basis, it paid less than my normal fee.
So to save money, they should hire you for a union gig. It's like a cost saving.
No, because on their end, they're paying like twice because they got to pay my vacation pay, which I never see, and my medical, which I never see, and the pension, and then they got to pay workers' comp, and it's a whole nother thing for them. I remember the first union gig I ever did was for the vice president of the union. I went in and to join the union. This was years ago when I first moved to LA. And he asked me, he goes, he gave me a tour of the facilities there when it was on Vine. He said, do you play classical guitar? And I go, well, yeah. And he goes, well, you want a gig this weekend or next weekend? I'm like, oh, sure. And he goes, my wedding, I need a classical guitarist for my wedding. I said, what, really? Okay. So I was the contractor, so I had to hire myself. And I think at the time I was charging $500 for a wedding. And I think, no, maybe back then I was charging $250. I think after I wrote 4 different checks to the union for all the 4 different things, I think I cleared about $200. So,
how is it that the vice president of the musicians union, I mean, I'm happy for you. How does he not have a guitarist like ready to go already?
Yeah, I have no idea. It was like a shock to me too. It was maybe he had somebody drop out. I think he just was like, what'd be nice is I think he was just trying to throw me a bone. Because it was like at a restaurant in Santa Monica. It was a very small wedding. And he just said, oh, would you play for dinner and then maybe play at the ceremony, maybe play this piece or whatever. And I'm like, sure, I'll do it. So, I think I spent $20 on parking.
Well, Tom, we appreciate your generosity with your time and your hauling out 1/10 of your arsenal of guitars from the closet. And now we know how long that takes. We especially appreciate that. And where can people who are more interested in potentially working with you, where can they find you online or on the web?
Well, if you go to tomstrahle.com, I don't really keep it really updated, but I think there's an email link there. I have a YouTube channel. You can see me there, T Strahle. I have 92,000 subscribers, I think. So almost 100,000 subscribers. And then And I think some of my subscribers are watching here because I told them I was going to be on. Have you been seeing that at all?
They are playing a drinking game, it seems like.
We have a drinking game. I'm sorry. If I use air quotes, everybody has to take a drink. Or if I touch my face, because that's a COVID no-no. If I change guitars, they've been drinking a lot because I change guitar. Anytime I change guitars, they have to take a drink. Or if I drop my guitar pick, they have to take a drink. So usually it's Diet Coke or coffee or whatever. That's hilarious. See, I don't see them because I'm not on the YouTube channel. I'm seeing the Skype. That's funny. I told them, sorry, I hope they didn't cause too much trouble.
Oh, they were fun.
Out on Monday.
I think we are at or slightly past our traditional hour. So, Vince,
right.
I think back to you to wrap us up.
Yeah, honestly, it was great just looking at all that stuff. And honestly, I was also really surprised to see that all those first instruments are like, oh yeah, these are those Epiphones and that Jaguar. It gave me some memories because my first guitar when I was a kid, I had a Jag Stang, and my friend had a Jaguar.
Right.
And it's like, oh, okay, it's kind of funny that, isn't it? But yeah, this was a fantastic show. Thank you so much for joining us for this. Well, it's been more than an hour, and we would love to have you again with maybe another 10% of your of your haul here, and maybe we could even provide you some cartage on that too.
I'm good.
All right.
We could also do sound design stuff too, like sound design from a guitar player's perspective.
I think that would be really cool. It'd be cool to check out what's going on the guitars and on your guitar rig. Actually, it'd be really cool to see what's going on there. But that we'll probably have to leave that for another time. This has been an episode of the Game Audio Hour, episode 205. If you want to keep up with updates, you could check us out on Twitter, where we will post about upcoming shows and guests like we just had here today. Until next time, goodbye.